I drew my sketch very lightly in pencil on my black piece of paper. You probably can't see it very well. If it's helpful to put a really light grid on your final sketch and then do the same on your paper, you may do that, but only draw your contour lines. Do not shade on your black piece of construction paper. Place your black square on your 12 by 18 piece of white paper and skew your black square just slightly. Don't turn it so much that it's symmetrical, and keep it toward the middle. You can push it up or down just slightly, but kind of offset it just a little bit, and then lightly with a pencil trace around all four sides of your construction paper. You can do this with scissors. For really intricate designs, it would be helpful to have an X-Acto knife. If you're using an X-Acto knife, you must use a cutting mat or a piece of cardboard or a cereal box to cut on. Do not cut directly on the table. I'm going to be using rubber cement. If you have a glue stick, that works well, but I prefer rubber cement. I also have a scrap of paper that I'm going to use to help me glue. And I'm going to start by first deciding which direction you want to place your black square. It honestly doesn't really matter. A good composition will work well in any direction. Next, I'm going to cut out one shape at a time. It is really important that you're only cutting out one shape at a time, that you're not cutting out the whole thing, because that would make it really hard to put back together. I'm going to start with this shape in the corner. Small shapes are going to be a little bit more complicated, but what you're going to do is decide on the corners, you're going to decide which direction you want to glue your shape. So imagine I have this whole piece that's intact, and I'm going to flip it and glue my piece either on this axis, or I have my whole piece intact and I'm going to flip my piece on this axis. It also might be helpful to even lightly draw around where you need to glue. You just need a tiny bit of glue. For small pieces, I like to put a little bit of glue on my scrap piece of paper and then kind of drag the piece through the glue. And then I'm going to stick it down and really match up the edge with this axis. Next, I'm going to cut out this shape. When you're cutting, really get a confident, sharp edge. Notice how for curves, I'm often turning the paper rather than turning my hand. You can get a lot more fluid cut. It will be smoother rather than if you turn the scissors, it'll be kind of jagged. So this piece is actually going to go on the inside of my square. You're going to alternate every other piece. So this piece will be in my square. Again, if this is confusing, then keep your piece on the inside and trace around. You should have this edge matching up. So this piece will go right here. You can just brush your glue on the back, or I like to put my piece on a scrap piece of paper so that way I can glue all the way to the edge. The nice thing about rubber cement is that it easily cleans up, whereas a glue stick is harder to clean up. If you have a little flippy like this, put glue on the edge of your scrap piece of paper, and then you can kind of slide it underneath. Next, I'm going to cut out this line. If you're confused, it's helpful to put everything back together and then figure out where it needs to flip. So I can choose to flip either this direction, or I can choose to flip this direction. So I'm looking for this axis or this axis. Make sure that you are reflecting, so you're flipping this whole piece like that. And then this edge is going to alternate every other piece. Or I could flip it this direction and it would look like that. I really recommend flipping your entire piece of paper, lining up this edge that you've drawn with the edge of your paper so it's perfect and your edges meet here, and then taking away your bigger piece of paper, trace around. You don't need to trace around the whole piece, but just give yourself some guidelines. And then glue this piece down. Make sure you don't accidentally turn over your piece. I'm gluing this side down. You can even put an X on the side you know you need to glue on. If you get glue on your fingers, make sure you go wash your hands. Every other piece is going to alternate between being glued inside the square or being flipped. If it helps to plan ahead, then you can kind of mark which pieces are going to be on the outside. So I know this piece will be on the inside, which means this one will be flipped, and then the next circle shape will be flipped, and the next circle shape will be flipped. So then I know I'm going to glue with the X side down because it's going to be flipped. Also, it should match your sketch, which mine actually got inverted, so what is black will be white and what is white will be black. If you have an X-Acto knife, you are welcome to use this. Be very, very careful when you are using an X-Acto knife. Make sure that the blade is screwed all the way in by tightening around this grippy area. And when you hold the blade, hold it on the gripped area. Don't hold it too far down and don't hold it too far up. Hold it like you would a pencil. Always make sure you have a cutting surface. Do not cut directly on your table, and you don't want to cut on your paper. When you are cutting lines, make sure that your other hand is out of the way, and you want to press firmly and drag the blade toward you. You don't want to have the blade too far up, and you don't want to have the blade too far down. Again, notice how I'm kind of turning the paper and my other hand is out of the way. I'm just holding the paper out of the way of the blade so that I can apply a lot of pressure. Since I cut out a few pieces at a time, I want to make sure that I line everything back up so I know exactly where these are and I don't accidentally switch anything. And then I'm going to flip my whole piece of paper, line up my axis, and again, just give yourself a guideline of where these pieces are going to be glued. Make sure you're being really precise with gluing on the axis. Make adjustments as needed so that your flipped piece fits exactly in line and in the negative space of your big square. I wanted to show you how complex you can get with these designs. I use an X-Acto knife to do this because I needed an X-Acto in order to get in these really intricate shapes as well as be able to cut inside of my square. I haven't glued this so that you can see how these are flipped. So this piece could flip this direction, and you can see how this all pieces together. However, like these objects, I decided to flip this direction. And these also fit in my negative space on this side. This will fit going this direction, and this will fit going this direction. You can see how I was really precise with how I lined up my positive and my negative space on each axis. And when you're done, what's cool about this is even though you started with a square, which is a very geometric shape, the overall artwork will have a more kind of organic quality to it. Notice also in this design that I have a focal point here and I'm repeating elements to create unity. but I also have a variety. I have some larger lines with thick to thin lines and different types of shapes, but it's all working together to be unified. I realized that by starting with this really tiny corner, I made it kind of hard to understand. I didn't really mean to do that, and that corner made all of my positive and negative inverted from my sketch. So let's also go back and look at this corner because I think it would be a little bit easier to understand. I'm going to use my scissors to cut out this shape. And then again, on my corners, I have an option of which axis I want to flip this on. So I could reflect it this direction, or I could reflect it this direction. Make sure that when you are flipping, you're not doing anything like turning it on accident or just rotating. You want to actually flip, which is reflecting. And definitely don't just like turn it this way because that wouldn't be the mirror image. I'm going to line up my entire square on this side, and then I know exactly where this shape will go into. Again, put an X on the side that you're going to glue down so you're not going to accidentally glue the wrong side. And carefully match up your axis and get your shape to be really precise and straight along your pencil line. Also go back and make sure it fits right where you have it lined up. And as you're working, make sure that this side is still matching up and your new side is also matching up. Next, I'm going to do this shape. For that, I'll need my X-Acto knife. If you don't have an X-Acto knife at home or you're not using an X-Acto knife, you might need to simplify some of your shapes a little bit. If your paper is kind of stuck and it's not cutting, you probably didn't press hard enough, and you want to make sure you have nice crisp edges. So press firmly in order to get a clean cut with a sharp edge on your paper. Then the nice thing about rubber cement is that you can kind of lightly rub off any glue that got on your paper. Be really careful and gentle so that you're not going to peel up your paper. If you're using a glue stick, just be really careful to try not to get any glue that's going kind of anywhere you don't need it, because you're not going to be able to clean it up. After you rub away the extra glue, then go back with an eraser and clean up any extra pencil lines that you can see. You don't want to use your eraser if you still have rubber cement on or glue on your paper. So get off all the extra glue first, and then you can gently erase. If you have a kneaded eraser, that would work well too. I am happy with how this one turned out, though I really do love the complexity I can get with this one using an X-Acto knife. With this one, the shape is a little bit large, especially since I cut everything from an edge to make it easier to do with scissors. I have this entire piece that goes in the middle, and that means I don't have quite so many things that can flip to either side. So if you can get your design to be a little bit more complex, maybe not this complex, but I encourage you to challenge yourself to see maybe some more detailed, smaller shapes, or even if this shape had some kind of bumps, to echo this kind of shape as well.